Good morning. For me, it's morning. Good afternoon for you, Professor Bijlani. I'm so glad that you received and answered my invitation to speak to you. Um, Recently, I came from this yoga teachers training and a yoga retreat in Delhi, where you were the leader of the yoga teachers integral yoga course. And since I came back, many of my yoga colleagues and people who I work with, they ask me, so what is this integral yoga about? Um, I thought you are the best person that I know who can explain about integral yoga. And let me say a few words about you. You're a professor and head of the Department of Psychology in All India Medical Institute in New Delhi. You're retired now and you work and live in Sri Aurobindo Ashram, Delhi branch. Right now, you do a lot of work. Despite you're retired, you do a lot of work and you created Yes Spirituality, Yoga and Educational Spirituality channel on YouTube. So from this point of view, I want to ask you about integral yoga. How is it different than all the other branches? Like popular schools in the West, Hatha, Ashtanga, Iyengar, Kriya, Kundalini yoga that have studios all around in London and in England and everywhere in the world. How is it different? Or is it different at all?
Let's start with a sort of something which, instead of talking about differences, talks about similarity. The similarity is that integral yoga is all inclusive. It can include just about any approach to yoga that anybody has made, uh, because it's a synthesis. Sri Aurobindo at that time synthesized the major schools of yoga which existed at that time and incorporated the essential features of each while taking care that the underlying spirit, all the schools, is retained. The spirit should not get undermined or subordinated to or overshadowed by the external forms. Now, the external forms are the techniques with which yoga is commonly identified, the asanas, pranayamas, meditation. But those are only the external forms. More important is what is going on within and how we bring yoga into daily life. So that is what uh, in a way distinguishes integral yoga, because it does not stop with those techniques. And the way it becomes integral is also that it becomes a 24-hour yoga. In everything that we do, we can bring in the guidance provided by yoga, which is in turn based on a spiritual philosophy. So uh, the spirit is retained by taking guidance from the underlying philosophy in everyday life. And to that are added the techniques to the extent it suits the person to maintain the instruments. So the techniques basically take care of the instruments, the body and the mind. So they are kept in good shape so that whatever we do, we are able to do properly. And then during the rest of the day, one is seeking guidance from this underlying philosophy. Not that one is asking every moment, what is the philosophy and what should I do? Uh, there are sort of general things which one can always keep in mind and try and follow as much as possible, because that philosophy, gets internalized through experience, introspection, and you are more likely to follow that guidance the longer you continue and the more sincerely one continues. So that would be one way of looking at integral yoga. And when it comes to the various schools which have mushroomed, uh, that the positive part is that means that yoga allows that flexibility, and integral yoga also allows the flexibility to each seeker, in fact, to carve out her own path. uh, when it comes to the flexibility within yoga, that allows innovation, that allows the emphasis on different aspects of yoga, and that is how different schools have multiplied. Of course, some of the multiplication has been due to commercial factors. Some has been because of the external pressures, like the people asking for yoga primarily as something which will keep them healthy or will relieve stress, or something that will help them uh, get rid of a disease. So, keeping these sort of pressures in mind, and again, I mean, different schools have come to have different types of emphasis. So, that sort of flexibility and innovation is there in yoga, but then integral yoga has scope for accommodating all these, because basically the individual seeker has been given the freedom to follow her own path, so long as the spirit underlying yoga is kept in mind while living our everyday life. The rest is quite sort of flexible. The attention to the body is important, so cues were taken from Hatha Yoga by Sri Aurobindo. Attention to the mind is important, for that cues were taken from Raja Yoga. Flexibility of the path and bringing it into daily life is important. For that, the cues were taken from the Yoga of the Gita. But then all this was knit into a single harmonious entity, so that you took care of the body and the mind, the instruments, they were kept in good shape. And then you took cues from the Gita and whatever Sri Aurobindo has talked about in his works about how this spiritual philosophy can be applied in everyday life, in the work that we do, the attitude with which we do the work, the choices that we make in the course of everyday life, and how we face the ups and downs of life. Because that is what basically life is about: the work that we do, the choices that we make, and the handling of the ups and downs of life. And this philosophy helps us in all of these, so that the work that we do and the way we face the ups and downs of life and the choices that we make, all these become opportunities for fulfilling the overall aim of yoga, which is spiritual growth. So, the overall aim, the underlying spirit, that is never forgotten or undermined in integral yoga. In fact, the synthesis became necessary exactly for this reason, because uh, even at that time, Sri Aurobindo felt that the emphasis was all on the outer form, on the techniques, and they had become rather rigid. And there was too much emphasis on exactly how something is to be done. So that's why he had to bring in both this flexibility and the widening of the approach, so that all life could become yoga. And that's what one of his celebrated quotes, that all life is yoga, which means all life gives us an opportunity for the practice of yoga.
That is one of my questions, actually. Sri Aurobindo has synthesized um, his work as all life is yoga. When I say this here to all my friends, even they know me, I'm a yoga teacher and I do yoga. Everybody accepts yoga like kind of stretching or physical exercises, and they will like look at me. So how is all life yoga? I even haven't gone to a yoga class ever in my life. And you already said how all life is yoga. First, we probably have to change a little bit the meaning of yoga, which doesn't mean stretching or physical exercises or asanas only, but yoga means unity. Is that correct? In Sanskrit, it means unity with the divine, unity with all our parts, like physical part, with the emotional part, mental part, and eventually with the divine. So,
Physical, emotional, mental, all these unite with the divine in the sense that their activities are influenced by the divine. And where is that divine? The divine essence is within us, our soul. So that guides the activities of the body, the emotional part of the being, and the intellect.
so actually, this is the meaning of yoga. It's not
Yeah.
just stretch, it's not just going to classes, doing like different kind of asanas. Can you do this? Can you do that? Yoga means connection to being integral, actually, as a
The
person.
techniques, the techniques find a place. They are necessary, but they are necessary because even for the body and the mind to work in light of that divine essence, the body and the mind should be healthy. They should be in good shape. But then, if you take that approach, then the yoga does not become technique intensive. The focus is not on the techniques, but the techniques are certainly permissible and even desirable. But then the main thing is the attitude and the spirit with which even these asanas are done. Because these techniques can also be done. One way would be I'm doing these stretches so that I become healthy. Another way is I doing these stretches so that I become healthy, and I want to become healthy so that I can use the body and the mind for my onward progress in the spiritual journey.
Yes, thank you
So
for.
the becoming healthy does not become an end; it becomes a means to a higher end.
Yeah, it's like a side effect if you practice every day and devote yourself to some practice, not only asanas. And here is another question of mine, that yoga also, it's accepted from many people. I go to yoga classes 3 times per week. So yes, I'm practicing yoga. But the lifestyle is not the yogic lifestyle. They go after the yoga class for a drink, for example, having a steak in the restaurant, or even at home, still eating, not the yogic lifestyle, not the vegetarian lifestyle, which is in the Western world is not that popular to eat in the vegetarian way. Um, so people who go 2 or 3 times per classes, can we say we still practice yoga, or do we need to incorporate all these little elements like the lifestyle, the way of thinking, the morals in the yogic teaching? Also, breathing practices and mindfulness, they're taught separately, completely like separate disciplines, but they're still part of the yogic lifestyle. And this is integral yoga.
No, I mean doing practicing stretches and breathing practices and meditation or mindfulness will not make it integral. It will just widens the scope and variety of the techniques, which means they can do more for the body and the mind. Well, one can look at it like this, that this part is the visible part and the easier part. The invisible part of yoga is more difficult, and it's a progressive thing. It should come from within, and that's what is important. But then you can look at it like this, that if the person practices these techniques, whether as one unit or as three separate units, and still gains a lot, one can understand that if only a small part of yoga practice can give us so much, how much more one can get by uh, doing everything. So that is would be one way of looking at it, and how much more one can get will be in every respect, in terms of health, in terms of happiness, and in terms of peace of mind. And the most important thing is a peace of mind. Happiness is something which cannot uh, be sort of separated from sorrow. Steady happiness is what we call peace. And that is, in fact, the most important thing that one gets. And again, it is not neither that either there is peace or there is no peace. It's not an all or none thing. It's a progressive journey. And even I'm not always at peace, but one can visualize that it is possible. It's something attainable uh, with uh, persistent aspiration. That is, the aspiration has to be persistent, but there should be no impatience. The aspiration should not be impatient. It will take time. Time is one of the ingredients in that journey. But when the techniques, so far the techniques are concerned, they are relatively easier to learn and practice regularly. And even that gives us a lot. And the rest can come slowly. But keeping that attitude to the asanas in mind is useful, because then the asanas also become enjoyable. If the overall aim is not forgotten, then the asanas are not a burden to be carried. It becomes enjoyable because one knows that I'm doing this with a higher aim, and therefore one enjoys doing it. And with this attitude, other types of sports, whether it is jogging, cycling, or swimming, they can also become a part of yoga. And without this attitude, the postures are there. They are one type of exercise, but they just basically remain exercise. Although we may call them yoga, but they basically remain a type of exercise. It's not the difference in the way the exercise is done which makes it different. What makes the yogic exercises different is the attitude with which they are done, the overall aim with which they are done. And with that attitude, with that aim in mind, any other games or sports can also become a part of yoga.
So every little effort means something to ourselves, even if we haven't acquired completely the yogic lifestyles. Even making time just in the evening for 1 hour after work, it's something that we are doing, we're striving, and we're choosing in our life.
Mhm.
And would you say, as a medical doctor and professor, that the integral yoga will have some therapeutic qualities for the person?
Well, let me start with an off sort of the track answer, uh, which you may not expect. Yoga, in fact, is therapeutic in the sense that it heals us of some very basic diseases. The most basic illness is ignorance of the deeper truths of existence. It gradually removes that. And what springs from that ignorance are the negativities such as desires, anger, attachment, greed, arrogance, now jealousy. Now, these negativities also it helps us get rid of. So, in that sense, all yoga is therapeutic. Yoga is therapeutic in a very basic sense. But then, turning to what probably you meant, what you meant was that does it help us treat diseases? Yes, it helps us in treating a wide variety of lifestyle diseases. And there are so many studies which have shown that even practicing the techniques like asanas, pranayamas, and making a little change in the diet and attending to some other lifestyle factors, which are to some extent in keeping with the yogic practices, all these things do help us in preventing disease and recovering from lifestyle diseases. Recovering does not mean that no other treatment is required. It's not an either or approach. What it means is, say, a mild case of hypertension or diabetes may require only this, and medication may not be required. If it's a little more severe case, medication may be required, but the dose of medication required could be less. Or if, say, a person has undergone bypass surgery, and a few months after that, the person modifies the lifestyle along the yogic lines, uh, then the person is unlikely to get a recurrence of the coronary artery disease. So, because the recurrences also do happen after bypass surgery. So, in that sense, yoga is therapeutic. Every bit of it helps. Only the technique also help. But then you can understand if only the techniques can help that much, why not all of it? Because the rest of it, if we look at just one uh, side effect of the rest of it, that is bringing yoga into daily life, that it helps us happier and be more at peace. Now, that helps in many ways. Firstly, it helps the mind body connection, the uh, positivity in the mind, peace of mind. They improve our immunity and they accelerate the healing mechanisms of the body, the self healing mechanisms of the body, and therefore it helps. So it's not only the techniques, the rest of it also helps in uh, preventing and managing disease. Another thing is that if we are trying to live that philosophy, then doing the techniques does not remain a burden anymore. One enjoys it, one feels like doing it. That applies to physical practices, that also applies to the changes in the diet. Say, for example, just to take a change in the diet, if a person uh, is told by the doctor that take plenty of green vegetables and avoid taking, say, high fat food, like, say, cake, avoid cake and eat more of fruits and vegetables. Now, if the person does that out of fear of early death, and person wants to live longer, and therefore for because of this fear of that I might die early if I don't do this, he does it, then he's under stress because he's eating fruits and vegetables, but he's thinking of cakes and ice creams and omelets and cutlets. Mm. But So the stress because of missing those things uh, can more than neutralize the benefit of eating fruits and vegetables. But if the person does it because the person now, on one hand, feels that the purpose of life is not just to go on getting these sensory pleasures, they are small, fleeting pleasures. I want sustained happiness, which comes from raising my goal higher. And now my goal is to go within and get guidance from there for how I should live my life, including what I eat. Then, when your goal is higher, then many small, small things they start automatically falling out of life. They're dropping out. You're not forcing yourself to do it. So you're doing it happily. Makes a lot of difference whether one makes a change in the lifestyle because one has to or because one wants to. If one has to do it as a compulsion, it's not that helpful because it adds stress, which in itself is harmful. If one wants
Yeah.
to do it and one does it happily, then that stress is not there. And therefore, even the physical changes, be it physical practices like asanas and pranayamas, or be it a change in the diet, they all become more effective because now there's no stress associated with them. One is not missing anything. One is not doing out of compulsion. One is doing it happily. So that's how bringing that philosophy in and living, trying to live life in terms of that philosophy helps also the therapeutic part of yoga.
Yes. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, Professor Bijlani, for taking from your afternoon time. I hope you will join again and talk about other topics, clarifying the path of yoga for me and for everybody who is listening as well. Wishing you a lovely evening. Thank you so much. Yes,
Thank you, Eleonora,
and
for taking this message to the UK. And I'm sure you have also contacts in Bulgaria and many other places in Europe. So the idea is to spread the message, help people live happier and healthier lives, and also to create a better world.